Okay, so I'm not entirely sure what exactly happened with the original audio, but I am having to voice this over, so I'm sorry guys, you are getting voiceover Zulu right now, but we are going to be playing some of the Binding of Isaac. It's been a while, so I figured, why not? Now, as we usually do, I ended up going ahead and randomizing it because, I am an indecisive bitch. So we ended up getting Azazel, which, the game seems to love to give me that when I haven't played for a while and I randomize. We ended up getting Cellar 1. We didn't do too bad, actually, for a first run after a good minute of not playing, but I guess Binding of Isaac is kind of one of those games that is like bike, like riding a bike. You never really for truly forget how it works. Anyhow, I was actually still pretty stoked for playing Azazel from the get-go because of the flight. And so my only qualm with Azazel, to be completely fair, is the charged shot. But once you practice enough with it, honestly, it is pretty darn fun. Now, I avoided picking that up for a little bit, and it was just because, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't necessarily too sure what it did at that very moment. I was really just trying to focus on everything that was going on the in the floor and with my health because when it comes to Azazel and his health, he definitely gives me a little bit of anxiety just because of the fact that I mean you can't pick up any red hearts. So if no soul hearts drop or whatever, it's one of those things where you kind of fucked. Now, I was a little bit upset here just because of I had taken some pretty stupid damage there, in my opinion. But I moved on from it and was hoping that maybe these fires had something. 5 cents for the card, which again, the game decided to do a fuck you and gave me the Fool as a secondary card when I already had said card. Now, this room, I felt like, I don't know, the item is okay, and getting a couple of pennies is never necessarily bad because they do add up, but I mean, 2 cents, you can't really ever get anything from the shop. Now, I was a little bit anxious about whether the space up bar item that I had gotten was actually going to be beneficial. So I figured, picking up the extra item might help. Any extra bit helps, right? Now, I actually was a little bit disappointed that we ended up getting Haunt for our first boss, but with all of the goodies that I ended up getting throughout the floor, it actually was very beneficial when it came to this particular boss. I am doing pretty, yeah, right there, I did pretty good. And that was just because I took the damage and there was the residual damage that happens when your um, dark heart explodes. Now, I couldn't pick up those red hearts, which again I was pretty sad about. Now, we did manage to make it to the second floor, and we got basement 2 for our little draw there. Here I am, pretty enjoying the little like swirly thing that the game decided to give me as like, a projectile like attachment. All right. Now, I was getting pretty lucky with having all of these rocks and areas to kind of take some coverage. I was trying to be careful so that I didn't end up taking damage in the process of trying to get to that soul heart. It was, the first soul heart I had seen all run so far, so I was pretty stoked when I saw that. Now, we just got this one dude in here. Again, you know, I took some kind of silly damage, which wasn't necessarily uh, a great thing. I decided to go ahead and keep what I had, and when we came in here, not really anything I can actually use, seeing as, I mean, the only items that are there are that I could actually use instead of just buying it to, like, have on the floor. Yep. And I'm freaking out a little bit because we're at 1 heart, and we still have yet to actually do the boss, but again, using the environment to my advantage, I ended up getting quite a bit of money from this chest alongside a bomb, which proved to be pretty useful later on in the run. Here I am deciding I'm going to kind of be cheatsy about it and just stand on the pot so that the enemies could not actually get to me. Now, we have a pretty decent amount of keys, not that bad of an amount of bombs, but definitely pretty decent amount of funds that I still couldn't quite get anything of use from the shop. And I really couldn't remember what was in the treasure room, so I decided to go back and look. Now, I did have the boom boom, so I wanted to pick up the little bit of money that we had in there so I could pick up the voodoo head because I was curious as to what it was, and I really, to be completely fair, just wanted to know what it was. Now, I believe we started heading to the boss because there was not anything else that we could do. Now, I actually was pretty sad when I saw this room. There is really no coverage, and I was just happy that I had the flight, though, because their trail did not end up uh, fucking me over. Had I not had the flight, it definitely would have. I was curious as to what the Deal with the Devil room actually had in store for us. There really wasn't anything, especially since, again, red hearts can't pick them up. So there was nothing else to do in that moment other than move on to the next floor and hope that we can actually get past it. Now, these runs were all pretty hectic, seeing as I mean, I haven't played in a while. I was pretty proud of the dodges that I was doing, though. So I guess the other games that I do play, came into effect there, like with the skills that I had learned from them. And that works out just perfectly fine for me. I'm not going to be upset with that by any means. Now, it took me a lot longer to get rid of this dude than I actually wanted it to. So that was a little bit embarrassing. But I mean, hey, what can you do? He was sitting there and having me go around in circles. And I eventually did end up getting him. There you go. And I ended up having a pretty decent amount of money come out of that, and after that, we only, I believe, had a couple of more rooms to go through, but I was again freaking out because right there what ended up happening with that. So for a first run after probably a good couple weeks of not playing the game, that actually wasn't too bad. I hadn't learned my lesson from doing the randomized option, and so I ended up randomizing it yet again, and I believe we ended up getting Eve, which Eve isn't necessarily bad, seeing as she has the I can't ever remember what it's called, but that bird that comes out. It definitely, if I had not had it, would have made my runs a lot more difficult. Well, this run a lot more difficult with what we were going against. We had, the meat dudes, which have the projectiles that go in 4 directions, And with there being so many of them, it was definitely nerve-wracking to try to, dodge around them and whatnot. I was really hoping that these fires were going to have something of use. I mean, a little bit of, change isn't necessarily bad, but I was really hoping for something else, like maybe a soul heart or, I don't know, a key or a bomb or, anything along the lines of that. Now, I was a little bit confused when I saw what it was that I had picked up. So I wasn't really sure if I had actually picked up anything useful because it's not something that I can remember I've actually encountered before in a game. Now, there was the chest and the key there. I did not have any bombs to be able to get into it, so I was hoping that within the next couple of rooms that I was going through that I was going to be able to find one, but I don't believe that it ended up actually playing out in that manner. I yeah, I ended up getting some health, which it was okay, and then a key, which again is an okay thing, but not exactly what I was looking for. Now, three little spiders isn't too bad. That one bit of damage that I had taken there was some pretty silly damage, so, I was kind of kicking myself for that one. But we got through the last room before the boss pretty easy, seeing as it was just the one enemy that is pretty easy to predict. And you don't have to worry so much about them, completely kicking your ass. Now, I did have one room left that I saw, and me being the completionist that I am, I honestly did not want to leave without doing it. And I about fucked myself over here because I believe this is when I actually tested out the roll thing. Yeah, that I did. And I was like, wait, what the flippity flappity flup? And it, I begrudgingly found out that it just refreshes the room. So that was a interesting find for me, informational wise, and I was just ready to move on to the next floor, but again, I wanted to make sure that I had not missed anything. I needed health, and I was pretty sure I had still had some health out on the floor that I actually had access to. So that is what we were taking care of there. I believe at this point, actually decided to finally go to the boss because there was nothing else that we could go and try to get into and, kind of trying to take advantage of whatever um it could give. Now I was sitting here so freaking like scared. I really thought I was going to end the run here and or at least end it a lot, quicker than I would like it to. And here I am, though, actually, kicking their booty. I'm really anxious here, and then it's a good thing that the original audio kind of flubbed up, so you guys didn't have to hear me, get a little too excited about actually making it out of that. Now, I did end up getting the boom boom, so I came back down this way so that I could see what it was that this chest was going to offer for me. I was pleasantly surprised with what I ended up getting. It definitely was worth coming back for it. So I ended up, happily moving on, just wanting to double check everything. And I ended up using another one of my bombs for the tarot card. I decided to save the tarot card for a little bit and could not remember what was in the shop, so I wanted to take a quick gander again, and yet again still decided that I did not want the items that were in the shop. So moved on to the next floor, and We, at that point, had actually made it to the second floor. We were almost to the third floor, which I was hoping to be able to get past the third because, I mean, the first run, we only made it to the third floor. So if we can, you know, do so, that'd be absolutely amazing. We ended up getting a pretty decent item right off the bat, and I was able to get it without taking the damage that the game was trying to force me to do. Now, I was a little bit surprised nothing was in there, and again, with like no tinted rock in there as well. But I wouldn't have been able to get to the tinted rock anyhow had I, had I there been one, just because I'm not having the flight and having all of the metal barricaded area, you wouldn't be able to bomb through that. Now, this flame thing was definitely, well, like effect to my shot was definitely pretty useful. I, hope to get it a little bit more frequent in the future runs that I do. And I I was a little bit worried about this one. I had taken quite a bit of damage and that one little spot right there, but I did manage to get out of that rather unscathed, not necessarily scathed, but like, rather undamaged. It was only a little bit that I had lost. Now, I did end up taking care of one side first, which I think was a good move on my behalf, just because then I wasn't being completely bombarded by stuff all at once, and I could focus on what it was that I was doing. Now, the bigger poop right there, I was just sitting there like, come on, dude, seriously, you know. And then we got our luck up, and then we had the moon. I did not see the fly right there, and again, kind of took some silly damage there. But I mean, you learn from your mistakes. Now, I did actually finally decide to use the tarot card that I had, and there was not anything other than some money and some like locked chest. I completely flubbed up there, and I was a little bit sad. So I was hoping that somewhere on the floor I was going to be able to find a bomb, and there I am taking some useless damage again, because I wasn't being observant. Now, I was hoping that there was a bomb in here, and there indeed was. So I was going to be able to go back and get my treasure, at least one of them anyhow. Now, I didn't really want to mess with the other one that wasn't locked. I don't know. It didn't really call to me all too much. So I got as close as I could to it without taking damage and exploded it, and then realized that I did not have key. And felt very dumb and kind of gave myself like palm to the face, because I could have gotten the item had I just gone with the chest that was not locked, as well as also paying attention to what was in my inventory. And you know that it could have gone a lot better in my opinion, but it still did okay. Now, we ended up having to go against the Girdlings, which I'm pretty sure we had gone against the Girdlings in the first run, but we did not have the flight this time, which was pretty unfortunate. Now, the bird, honestly, if I had not had it, I would have actually not made it through this round, unfortunately. Now, the game did end up deciding to be slightly pleasant to me, and gave me some health right after that fight so that I could make it to the next floor. Now, we did go ahead and make it to the third floor, which ended up being Catacombs 1. And right off the bat, we had these annoying little fucks to deal with, but having the flame tears was actually not too bad. The something's wrong really was not useful in that moment, but I mean, you really don't know what you're getting with those pills unless you take them. Now, I was pretty pleasantly surprised with how quick I was actually zipping through this floor, and it just didn't quite seem right to me. I felt like there was a mishap in the way that the floor was chosen, but also I wasn't necessarily upset, nor am I going to, be upset about it. It was just something interesting that I had noticed that I thought it would, be interesting to point out. Now here I am, picking up 2 hearts when I did not need it, and that purely was because I wasn't necessarily paying attention to what exactly it was. I did just glanced and saw that there was red, which usually is a heart, so I went for it when I took the damage. Now, I did not want the weird bouncy ball thing. I wanted to keep my lighter, and we ended up getting Rotten Baby, which is the infested friend, which is pretty bomb diggity if you ask me. Now, we were actually doing pretty decently, and I was pretty happy at this point with how we were doing, and here I am going back going like, fuck, seriously? Stop it. Now, these dudes, if I hadn't actually had the flame tears, that room would have definitely flippity flappity up my run. Now, I was not sure what I wanted to do in this situation, just because there was some pretty decent stuff, but I did end up going for the bomb. And here I am freaking out because it's the, dudes that have the homing shots. So I knew it was probably going to be inevitable for me to take damage in that room. I was just hoping it wasn't going to be a crud ton of damage. And, you know, here I am again taking some pointless damage, although that extra boost of damage was definitely what helped me be able to get through that. Now, I unfortunately ended up getting taken out right before the boss here. And here I am kind of just sitting for a second because I'm like, well, really? And then I decided to, instead of randomizing it, I kind of looked at the characters that we actually have unlocked, and I was having a little bit of an issue trying to decide who I wanted to play, but I ended up playing Kane because I wanted to have that luck foot. And I think even though we didn't necessarily last as long as I exactly wanted to, the like items and stuff that we got and whatnot actually wasn't too bad. If I had used them in a better manner, I, you know, would have been a little bit more pleased in that situation. But I mean, what can you honestly do, other than just kind of like brush off the situation and move on, learn from your mistakes, and hopefully, be able to fix them in the future if there ends up being a situation, or be able to avoid doing said thing. Now, this was a room that I was a little bit confused about because we do have the one champion enemy in this room along with us, and I don't believe it actually had dropped anything when I murdered it, so that was a little bit weird. I always thought I remembered, well, I thought I remembered always having something drop when you ended up taking out a champion enemy, but I guess that wasn't the case in this one. Now, Monstro's Tooth is pretty down. If I could speak, that'd be amazing. But bomb diggity. So I was pretty happy when I ended up getting that in a room. All of these stones, actually, it was like a blessing and a curse, because it was pretty helpful to be able to dodge some of the projectiles and the damage that those dudes were very adamant that I needed. But here we are, right at the boss again, and they got these evil flies. These dudes, I have some issues with predicting. Although, I mean, that's a little bit silly just because they kind of go in like, like a circular motion or whatever. But when you got that many of them and they're moving quite a bit, you don't really think too much about it other than, yeah, they're just, yeah, you're moving quite a bit and a little bit difficult. Now, spawning that Monstro card was, not card, but, space item, pretty much did most of the work for me. Now, we again did end up making it to the second floor, which ended up getting basement 2, a treasure room right off the bat with all of tar, which was pretty good for me throughout this floor. I ended up taking a little bit of stupid damage there, but again, what can you do in those situations? Now, there was a lot of enemies in this room, and I was really trying to prioritize the ones that were going to be more of a pain in the ass because they're going to, be on my booty. But I actually didn't end up taking too much damage, and I wanted to try to get through the rest of this floor as quick as possible. Just because the quicker you go through the floors, less likely you are to lose health, and, all the good whatnots may bring power of range. That was that. And now, not doing necessarily too bad in this room. I was a little bit disappointed to see that there really wasn't much for like the loot pool when I was going through. And I don't believe that any of the poops had actually dropped anything. No, at least like the enemy poops, not the stand by ones. Oh, 1 penny is always, okay. I mean, because it definitely does add up. But I didn't want to waste any of my bombs to just get that one key. I didn't see the need for it, but we ended up having some more of those evil purple flies, and I did not necessarily see anything right off the bat that was actually useful, so I just decided to put the not items, but the pennies that I had into the donation machine, and I wanted to go ahead and get the one that was actually going to run at me out of the way as soon as possible, just because, I mean, the other ones are going to go off towards the side. Now, the enemy actually helped me out in that sense, and I did not have to use one of my bombs to get into the, secret room. And the secret room did have the Eternal Heart, which I was going to have to remember to go back for. Now, here I am being the completionist that I just can't help but be, and I am going back through and double checking stuff, hoping that if there was anything that I had missed, that I had found it. And I was a little bit, wary at that point. I was hoping to maybe find another bomb or a key before we went into the boss. But I was ready to go ahead and just head straight to the boss and get it over with at that point. I had a fully charged spacebar item, and I figured since the last floor had actually been extremely useful with that particular spacebar item, that it should help with this one as well. Now, I went ahead and I dropped it, but I did not drop it necessarily in the best spot possible because it could have definitely taken a little bit more damage from the Monstro drop, but having it nearly take like half of its health out for me was very nice because then I didn't have to necessarily freak out as much about like getting in its bubble and causing the damage. Now, I was unsure about not taking damage with that, but I did, and I'm pretty sure it was just because its health was honestly so low. We ended up going into the devil room just to take a look because, I mean, it's never bad to look. You might find something that isn't actually requiring you to give up anything. Not that it's super common, but it does happen. Now, I did remember to go back for my Eternal Heart, and there really was nothing left to do other than head on to the next floor. We were able to make it to the third floor on the last round that we did. We got Caves 1 with Curse of the Maze, which, I mean, was okay. Now, the tar actually did help once I kind of caught on with the fact that if I put it like that, then they would slow down and I could have more time to be able to shoot their weak spot. And not doing too bad with that. I definitely found that, interacting with just one of them and trying to get one of them out at a time was the best method, but in some situations that's really not something that is viable to happen. Now, this room is where it definitely fucked me up. I was having issues getting this bat down enough, and it just kind of seemed like my shot pattern was all over the place, but I was also slightly freaking out, and just because there really wasn't a whole lot of safe space without taking damage, because I mean, each corner had one of those little blow up things, and I ended up getting down to half a heart, and I was so relieved when I saw that heart come out of that chest. I also had a bomb, so I was able to get the health that was there. I didn't care about the money just because, I mean, the last couple of floors, this shop really didn't have anything of value. And I mean, I don't know, it just wasn't worth it in my opinion. Now, I tried to do this room without taking any damage, and that didn't quite happen, but it did drop half a heart, so I mean, I guess they kind of anticipated for it to still kind of fuck you up, even though it was just the projectile statues. Now, I didn't have a key, so I didn't even bother going to the treasure room. This champion one, I really wanted to get out right away just because, I mean, it's champion one, it's going to cause more damage, and I did not want to deal with that, so that is why I decided to go about it in the manner that I did. Now, here I am being the completionist yet again that I am, taking out all the poos, and then realizing that the doors are still locked, so there is an enemy or enemies still in the room. I'm trying to time where the spikes are going, and then I end up finding our little friends here, and I, went ahead and took them out one by one. It's just easier to do it that way. And I then saw that we had a shop right next to us, but then yet again, we are in the same predicament of not having a key in order to be able to go in and look at what was there. Now, I was a little bit unsure of whether, at first, whether I wanted to go to the treasure room or the shop, but I ended up deciding to go with the treasure room and the scooper plop. It had a 3-room charge, but I was really digging my Monstro item that I had, and I was happy that those did not, sometimes some of them will like turn back on or some of them won't, and actually having all of them decide to stay inactive, which was very lovely. And now here's a bunch of the boom booms that I was not very pleased with having to deal with because I was taking way more damage than I really should have been. But again, you learn from your mistakes and it makes you better for future runs. Now, I was pretty close to death at this point, So I was really excited that I had the bomb in order to get to the health that I needed. I was nearing to the boss, and I really wanted to be able to get past floor 3 on this run. So I was really trying my hardest to not take any damage prior to going into the boss. Now, here is where I messed up. I decided yet again to be the completionist that I am, and I ended up taking damage when I came into this room to see if maybe I could milk the room, like, the floor for any other perks of some sort. Nah, took on yet quite a bit of damage from the dudes in that room and was forced to have to move on with only the 2 hearts because I looked at the map and there was not any health that I actually had access to. Now, Pestilence was definitely a pain in the booty to go against. If I hadn't had the Monstro thing, I probably would have died a lot sooner in the match. And still, struggling here, even with avoiding the poisonous trail that they leave as much as possible and having my own trail. But it honestly was just because, I mean, Pestilence, I believe that's who it was, has flight and isn't going to touch my trail. Now, I unfortunately did end up not making it past floor 3 and ended up cutting it off there. Now, if you did happen to like the video, go ahead and leave a like to let me know you enjoyed. Subscribe if you'd like to become part of the Goblin Army family, and if you'd never like to miss a post, push that bell icon. Now, you spread positive vibes, I'll spread positive vibes. Until next time, have a goblin-tastic day. Bye!